Hey, what's up everyone? Hope you're all having a wonderful time. Here the Whirlwind Barbarian in Diablo 4. And the footage from this character is currently at level 80 and the build's been doing level 50 plus Nightmare Dungeons fairly easy. Not completely flawless, but I've been completing them at least, and I still got some more mid-maxing to do, but I think we're in a pretty good spot to show you what's going on with this build. The Whirlwind Barbarian is a very iconic build and have been around for a very long time. We're basically channeling the skill, dealing damage to enemies around us for a cost of fury per second. And to be able to keep the Whirlwind skill up for as long as possible, we are focusing on getting as much fury cost reduction, resource generation, and we're also using different shouts to help out with even more resource generation, but also movement speed, more defense and damage. To keep them up, we want to get as much cooldown recovery as we can, and this will help keeping our shouts up pretty much all of the time. The gameplay for the Whirlwind Barbarian is very straightforward. We first use Rallying Cry, then War Cry, Shelling Shout for the buffs that I just mentioned, and then we use Wrath of the Berserker as our ultimate ability, providing berserking, movement speed and also even more resource generation. Then we can start to use Whirlwind for as long as we can, and it's possible to note here that we are using our shouts and ultimate before we use Whirlwind so we don't interrupt ourselves while we are channeling. The build overall is very easy to play and it's one of those really great speed farming builds, as we can get some really nice movement speed and also dealing damage while we are moving. We also achieve almost 100% uptime on Unstoppable, making us immune to crowd control such as frozen, slowed or stunned for instance. The biggest con for this build would be to get your Fury, Sustain and Cooldown Recovery. It's very gear dependent to get a fluid playstyle of the build, and the shouts also make us able to be more tanky, and if you don't get all the recovery speed needed for the build, this will then result in that the shouts will have some downtime, and when you are pushing for those higher Nightmare Dungeons, you will most likely get one shot if they are not up. And now for the aspects, let's go over them one by one and how they work for this build. I put a link to the build planner if you'd like to go and check it out for yourself. Link for this will be in the description. Let's start with the rings, and the first one we want to have is the aspect of Echoing Fury, making our shouts to generate fury per second while active. And so this will give us up to 12 fury per second as we are using 3 different shouts. Next we have Bold Chieftain's aspect, and whenever you cast a shout skill, it's reduced the cooldown to up to 1.9 seconds per nearby enemy, up to a maximum of 6 seconds. And basically this makes it so we can use our shouts again more frequently. And these 2 aspects that I just mentioned can only be found on rings. And next, let's go over to the damage aspect for this build, and just a quick note here is that we do ramp up our damage here with all these different aspects before we start the Whirlwind, and this is why we don't want to interrupt the skill, because all these aspects will continue to boost the Whirlwind damage for as long as we channel it. So the first one here on one of our two-hander is going to be the aspect of the Dire Whirlwind, and this makes our Whirlwind critical strike chance increase up to 60% for each second it's channeled, up to 48%, huge for the damage for this build. The second two-hander that we use is called Aspect of Limited Rage, and this makes it so when we generate Fury while we are at max Fury, our next core skill will deal up to 4% increased damage, up to a maximum of 60%. And for the first one-hander we have Conceited Aspect, and this makes us deal up to 25% increased damage while we have a barrier active, and the barrier we gain from these unique pants here, but I'll go over them more in just a bit. The second one is called Aspect of Berserking Ripping, and will make it when we deal direct damage while berserking, we inflict up to 30% of the base damage as bleed damage over 5 seconds. We get berserking from different sources, but mostly from our ultimate skill, shouts, and also from one of our glyphs. On our amulet here we're using Edge Master Aspect, and this makes skills deal up to 30% increased damage based on our available primary resource when we cast. So as long as we have full fury, we gain its full damage potential. The last damage aspect is from our gloves and it's called aspect of the Exectant, and this makes it so we deal up to 10% decreased damage for our next core skill up to a maximum of 30%. So we hit 3 times with our generator skill to get the full effect of this aspect. For the defensive aspects, let's start with our helm here, and here we're using aspect of Disobedience. That will increase our armor for 4 seconds when we deal any form of damage, and this will stack up to a maximum of 50%. For the chest, we're using a unique Rage of Harrogath, and this chest on lucky hit will give us up to 40% chance to reduce the cooldown of your non-ultimate skill by 1.5% when we inflict bleeding on elites. And as we do both deal bleed with our basic and core skill, this helps out a lot with the cooldown on our shout skills. And for the pants, we're using the unique pants Temetry, which makes it so effects that heal you beyond 100% life grant you a barrier up to 80% of your maximum life, and this will last for 8 seconds. And not only do this provide some extra layers of defense, but also makes it so we pretty much always have the uptime on the conceded aspect from our one-hand weapon, as mentioned before. On the boots here we have the Ghost Walker aspect, providing additional move speed and also so we can freely move through enemies while we are unstoppable, and also 2 seconds after. If you manage to get capped on your moving speed, you can change this aspect to the Grasping Whirlwind, which will make so Whirlwind pulls enemies to you for some easier time clearing. For the stats, the most important ones to get is going to be cooldown reduction, resource generation, and also fury cost reduction. And these are going to be the most important stats for this build, as we want to be able to use our Whirlwind and also having our shouts up as much as possible. Maximum Fury will also help out a bit here, but I would primarily focus on getting these 3 stats first. For the cooldown reduction, you want to get it on your helm and also amulet. Resource generation, you can find them on your rings. And lastly, fury cost reduction on your amulet and boots. For damage, try to focus on getting vulnerable damage, critical strike chance, and also damage to close enemies, and also strength. Also, all stats is great to have later on some pieces of your gear, as it do helps to achieve the stats requirement for the bonus rewards from our glyphs. For some defense, try to focus on damage reduction from close enemies that are bleeding, and also while fortified. Let's go over the glyphs here, and to start with we are using Exploit, and this makes it so when an enemy is damaged by you they become vulnerable for 3 seconds, and this is really great for our damage, and also for every 5 dexterity we also gain increased damage to vulnerable targets. Next we're using the Ledger Node Blood Rage, and this makes it so when we kill a bleeding enemy we have a chance to gain Berserk for 5 seconds. And for the glyphs, here we want to use Martial, which makes it so the cooldown of shout skills reduced by 1.2 seconds after we cast a shout skill. We also gain some damage to bleeding enemies here, and damage reduction from enemies that are bleeding as well. Next we're using the Ledger Node Decimator for a 8% chance to make enemy vulnerable for 2 seconds with lucky hit. And here for the glyph node we're using Disembowel, which makes it so when we kill a bleeding enemy we have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of our non-ultimate cooldowns, and this will help out with our shout skills even more. Next up we're using the Ledger Node Warbringer, and this makes it so for every 75 fury that we spend we gain 12% of our maximum life as fortified. And here we want to put the glyph Wrath, makes it so the skills that crit generate 3 fury. This helps to keep our channeling up for the Whirlwind, and we also deal increased critical strike damage here for every 5 dexterity. For more information I suggest you check out the build planner if you'd like to know how I path throughout the Paragon board. The Arsenal system allows Barbarians to grant ourselves different bonuses depending on the weapon of choice. For the technique slot it will be different depending on what weapon of choice that we are using. However, you should always go for the highest item level here, as it is going to increase your base damage. So in my case here I'm using a 2-handed axe at the moment, so then I'm going to use the 2 two-handed sword on the technique slot. For the 20% of our direct damage will be inflicted as bleed over 5 seconds. And if you are using a two-handed sword, switch to the two-handed axe expertise instead, and this will provide so we get increased damage against vulnerable enemies. Let's take a quick look on the skills here. For more information about the build, I do recommend you go and check out the D4 build planner. As I mentioned before, link for this will be in the description. So we're going with launching strike. This will charge ourselves force to an enemy, and we're also using battle launch strike for the bleed. We're using whirlwind, very basic here, with furious whirlwind, so we also inflict the bleed. 3 points in pressure point give us our lucky hit that our core skill have up to 30% chance to make our enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. All our point in rally cry for some move speed and also resource generation. And here we want to go for tactical rallying cry. We're also using challenging shout for the damage reduction from this. And here we're also going for tactical challenging shout. We're using war cry for some berserking and also so we increase our damage. And here we're going with power war cry. We have 3 points in swiftness for movement speed, all a point in booming voice, 3 points in raid leader, and a remainder point in guttural gel, 1 point aggressive resistance, and 3 points in prolific fury. We have 3 points in Pit Fighter here for increased damage to close enemies, and also No Mercy for increased critical strike chance. 1 point in Hamstring, so our bleeds will now also slow enemies. Really important here to put 1 point in. 3 points in Heavy Handed for increased critical strike damage. 1 point in Tempered Fury. 3 points in Invigorating Fury, so we heal some extra when we spend 100 Fury. And lastly, we're going with Wrath of the Berserker here. Movement speed, berserking, unstoppable for a short duration, and with all its other perks here. Lastly, stopping with Unbridled Rage here, make it so the core skill will deal 135% increased damage, but would cost 100% more fury. So what do you think about the Whirlwind Barbarian? Sound in the comments below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!